Module 3, Lesson 21's objective is to solve two-step word problems involving multiplying single-digit factors and multiples of 10. Item 4. Mr. Ramirez receives 4 sets of books. Each set has 16 fiction books and 14 nonfiction books. He puts 97 books in his library and donates the rest. How many books does he donate? Now that we've read the problem, let's underline the important details. 4 sets of books. Each set has 16 fiction books, 14 nonfiction books. Puts 97 books in his library, donates the rest. Now I'll highlight my question. How many books does he donate? If you don't have a highlighter, you could use a yellow crayon or circle the question. Now it's time to go ahead and draw out the way that I'm going to solve this problem. I think I'll use a tape diagram in order to show the number of books that are fiction and nonfiction. I'll label the first diagram fiction. Let me write that neater. He bought 4 sets of books, so I'm going to put 4 sections to my tape diagram. Each of those sets has 16 fiction books, so I'll put 16 in each section. Now I'll draw a tape diagram for the nonfiction. Again, 4 sets of books, so there's 4 sections to the tape diagram. And each of the sets had 14 nonfiction books, so I'll label each section with a 14. Now, the total of these will be labeled with an F, and the total of these will be labeled with an N. F will be the total fiction books, and the N will be the total nonfiction books. We always need to define what our letters mean for the unknown. So when someone looks at our paper, they know what it stands for or represents. Now let's figure out how many fiction books that Mr. Ramirez received. I'll label this section fiction. Well, there are 4 groups of 16 equals F. I can decompose the number 16 to be a 10 plus a 6. So now I will go ahead and use the distributive property of multiplication and write out my equation this way. 4 times 10 plus 4 times 6 equals F. I know that 4 times 10 is 40. Plus, I know that 4 times 6 is 24. That equals F. So 40 plus 24 is 64. So Mr. Ramirez received 64 fiction books. Now let's figure out how many non-fiction books he received. I'll label it over here. When I label things, it helps my teacher to know what each of the equations are for. The picture shows that I have 4 groups of 14, and that equals N, or N, remember, is the total of nonfiction books. I can decompose 14 to be 10 and 4, and then use the distributive property of multiplication and rewrite the math problem to be this way. 4 times 10 plus 4 times 4 equals N. This is much easier to solve. 4 times 10 is 40, plus 4 times 4 is 16. That's going to be equal to N. So 40 plus 16 is 56. Now we know that Mr. Ramirez received 64 fiction books and 56 non-fiction books. The question is, how many books does he donate? Well, in order to figure that out, I need to figure out how many books in all he received. So let's take the totals of fiction. That's 64 fiction. And 56 nonfiction. And add them together to see the total amount altogether that he received. 6 ones plus 4 ones is 10 ones. I'll put a 0 in the ones column and a 1 in the tens column. 6 tens plus 5 tens is 11 tens, plus 1 more is 12 tens. So he received a total of 120 books. In order to answer the question, how many books does he donate, we need to take the total of books that he received, 120, and take out the 97 that the story tells us that he kept to find the difference. If I have 0, can I take away 7? No. So I'll borrow from the neighbor and unbundle a group of 10. Instead of having 2 tens, I'll now have 1 10. Instead of having 0 ones, I'll now have 10 ones. 10 ones minus 7 ones is 3 ones. 11 tens, you can see that because if we unbundle the hundreds column and put them in the tens column, we now have 11 tens. 11 tens minus 9 tens is 2 tens. And 0 hundreds minus 0 is 0. So this is how many he donated. Now, how many books does he donate? That we better write in a sentence. He donated 23 books. Now, as you can see, there wasn't very much room for me to show all my work, so I had to put some in the margins. For you, you can use a scratch paper and label your scratch paper just like I did, so your teacher knows what problem you're working on. Label it with problem 4 and then show the work just like I did. And then, of course, you'll staple it to your homework sheet so your teacher can see how you solve the problem. Now, let's look at item 5. Celia sells calendars for a fundraiser. Each calendar costs $9. She sells 16 calendars to her family members and 14 calendars to the people in her neighborhood. Her goal is to earn $300. Does Celia reach her goal? Explain your answer. Let's go ahead and underline the important details. Each calendar costs $9. She sells 16 calendars to her family and 14 calendars to the people in her neighborhood. Her goal is $300. Now let's highlight the question. Does Celia reach her goal? And I'm going to underline, explain your answer. Instead of drawing a tape diagram, let's go ahead and use the distributive property of multiplication to figure this out. Right here, we'll figure out how much she made selling calendars to her family. According to the story, each calendar costs $9, and she sold 16 to her family. So that's $9 times 16. And that will equal F. F is for family. Let's go ahead and decompose the 16 to be 10 plus 6. Now we'll have 9 times 10 plus 9 times 6 equals F. 9 times 10 is 90. Plus 9 times 6 is 54. That will equal F. And then you add that together and get the answer and write it right here. Don't forget a dollar sign though, because we're talking about dollars. Now let's figure out how much she made when selling to neighbors. This time, again, the calendars were $9 each times 14 neighbors. That will equal N for neighbors. Let's decompose 14 to be 10 plus 4. We'll use the distributive property and make this 9 times 10 plus 9 times 4 equals N. Again, 9 times 10 is 90, plus 9 times 4 is 36. That equals N. You figure out what 90 plus 36 is and write it here. Don't forget the dollar sign. Now, in order to figure out how much she made altogether from selling to family and neighbors, we better add the two together and make that F plus N equals T. I'll put an F right here for family and an N right here for neighbors as a reminder. Go ahead and put the amount right here for family plus the amount right here for neighbors, and that will be your total. We need to use dollar signs, so I had to write those in. And T is total. Then all you need to do is answer the question, does Celia reach her goal? You write it in a sentence. Yes, Celia reaches her goal because, or no, Celia did not reach her goal because. The reason we have to put because is the directions tell us to explain our answer. Now let's do number 6. The video store sells science and history movies for $5 each. How much money does the video store make if it sells 33 science movies and 57 history movies? I'll underline the important details. Movies, $5 each. 33 science movies, 57 history movies. I will highlight the question. How much money does the video store make if it sells 33 science movies and 57 history movies? Now I will begin by doing a similar method as to the one for number 5. I'll figure out how much was made on science movies. I'll label my paper so my teacher knows that this section is going to be devoted to the science movies. And that'll be S. If the movies were $5 each and 33 were sold, that's going to be 5 times 33. We'll write that as being the same as, now I'll decompose 33 to be a 30 and a 3 and rewrite the equation this way. $5 times 30 plus $5 times 3. So $5 times 33 is the same as $5 times 30, which is $150, plus $5 times 3, which is $15. So 150 plus 15 equals what? You write it here. Don't forget your dollar sign. Now, let's figure out how much she made on history movies. We'll label that H for history. Again, they're $5 each times, this time, 57, because that's how many movies she sold at the video store. The video store sold. I can decompose 57 to be a 50 and a 7. This is the same as $5 times 50 plus $5 times 7. I think I'd like it better if I wrote it side by side better. So let me try that again. $5 times 57. That's a 50 and a 7. Is the same as 5 times 50 plus 5 times 7. Now 5 times 50 is 250. And 5 times 7 is 35. So what is 250 plus 35? You write the answer here. Now, let's figure out how much she made altogether. That would be S for science plus H for history equals T for total. The science, you put that amount here, plus the history, you put that amount there, and then that will equal the total. At the bottom. In order to answer the question, how much money does the video store make if it sells 33 science movies and 57 history movies, you have to add the science and the history to get the total. Then you need to answer it in words. The video store made blank dollars.